Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome on this Thursday morning for Ask the Theologian. I'm glad you are here as we take your biblical, theological, and worldview questions and hopefully have a tremendous time doing it all. If you're watching live, you know the drill on randywhiteministries.org or on YouTube. You can put the word question first and we'll watch that and put those on today's program. Or you can always go 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to randywhiteministries.org, where you can find the Ask a Question button right up in the top menu and submit that. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we'll get you all taken care of. Tonight, this is Thursday. On Thursday, we do our Bible study. We are currently doing this series right here, Living the Torah, a biblical refutation of the impossible law claim. We've been having fun doing that. Tonight, we're going to look at the sacrificial system and how the law itself brought about an ability to self-correct, get you back in right standing with the law many times. So we'll check that out. 7 p.m. Mountain Time. Would love to have you join us for that and all the good time that comes about through all that. So let's see you tonight. Dan, let's get right in on these questions here this morning. Good to see all of you, Alabama and Georgia and Florida and Texas, and welcome. Down in Georgia, Tony, the Acts 20 grace believer, says in Revelation 13:3. Let's just stop right there even before we go any farther and read Revelation 13:3. I saw one of his heads. This is speaking, I believe, of the beast, the Antichrist, if our assumption is right. I saw one of his heads, as it were, wounded to death, and his deadly wound was healed. And all the world wondered after the beast. Obviously, a very interesting passage of Scripture. Looks like it's talking, if we're interpreting it correctly, like it's talking about the future Antichrist. He gets a deadly wound and was healed. The world was amazed. Okay, the question. Revelation 13:3 says, all the world wondered after the beast. Does this refer to the known world at the time of writing, or the entire planet Earth as we know it today? You know, that is a good perspective to come in and ask the question, or read the Scripture in kind of a persnickety way. Normally, of course, when we say all the world, all the world wondered, we would take that as the whole world. Many times we would take it, for God so loved, the world, that he gave his only begotten Son. So we would want to do a little bit of research on this world stuff. Then there's some other places in there. Would you check Revelation 13:3, see what the underlying word for world is? Actually, I may have it right here. Yeah, there we go. Let's see, healed and world. Okay, gay is the word right there, which is taken in a number of ways. I think, look up in Matthew chapter 5, Jesus says, I believe the meek shall inherit the earth. See if that's the same word, gay. I think that's the word that is sometimes earth, sometimes it's land, sometimes it's world. Depends on the context of where you put it there. It's not one of the broader words like cosmos or like eon, which is sometimes translated world or age. So you could, I'm pretty sure you could take this and say that, let me remove all this Greek here and get down to the English. Okay, that is the same. The blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. But the inheritance part that it's talking about is really the promised land of Israel. They shall inherit the land, you might say, not all of the world, as the question here, not the whole planet. They're not going to inherit the whole planet. They're going to inherit the land that has been promised to them. So there's an example of taking this in a more limited way. Can you look up that particular word, Luca, and see if we can find where that word is almost definitely taken to mean the entire planet? So again, our question is it just everybody in that localized region? Now, of course, we do live in a day, and I don't see this changing. I don't see us going backwards here. We do live in a day when information travels at the speed of light. So does it make any theological impact if we limit this to the land? It might. Or does it really matter if it happened in that land, but everybody in the whole earth knew about it? So again, as we come to this, and all the earth, all the land, all the world wondered. What we wonder is, are we talking about, I hear that word about volume, are we talking about just a localized event? Those in Jerusalem, for example. What is it that we've got there that we're taking a look at? Okay, so the word itself can mean either. Do we have a place where, I'm going to put up 3 scriptures, and I'm going to put up Matthew chapter 5, and Matthew chapter 5, verse 5. Now, do we have another earth, land word that we would say, hey, that's definitely the entire planet? Is there one? Matthew 5:18. Let's check this out. So I put all 3 of them up on the screen here. We're wondering about the world. Blessed are the meek, they shall inherit the earth. And should be Matthew 5:18. Matthew 5:18, verily I say unto you, till heaven and earth, same word there, pass. Okay, that, I think we would probably agree, that's the entire planet. But inherit the earth here is at least arguably the land based upon what they're promised to inherit. So all the world. Now, the question is, would the word all change that to be really, let's say, for example, here, what if in Matthew 5 it said, they shall inherit all the land? We could still take it either way, I suppose. But all the world might put it in the sense of planet. The planet wondered about the beast. So here's what I would say, Tony. You could probably make an application saying this is localized. Everybody, let's say in the land of Judah, wondered at the beast. Now, if I were listening to you do it, and I heard Tony say, I'd like to present today the idea that all the world means some of the world. Obviously, that would raise a little bit of suspicion right at first. But I would say, okay, I know Greek. I know that world, can be limited or it can be broad, even in a modern sense. We sometimes, I think, use it in a more limited way. But I would want to know, what are the implications of that? What happens if I limit it versus if I explode it? Does it make any difference somewhere? Because my suspicion would be, as a skeptical thinker, my suspicion would be that Tony wants to sell me something, but I'm not sure if I want to buy it. I might, because Tony's pretty smart. I might want to buy it. But if I want to buy it, I want to be able to resell it. So, is there enough here to go on? I'm going to say that the normal sense of all the world is all the world. It's the planet. All around the planet, they wondered after the beast. So to get me away from that normal sense, I want a good argument. I'm not sure I've got a good argument here. The only thing I know is it is a possible argument, but it sort of breaks just the normal reading, and so that immediately makes it not a great argument. But can I, in the context of Revelation 13 or in the context of the abomination of desolation, can I make this more localized? Because there's a lot of, let's say, earth-shattering politics that don't shatter the earth. On a local level, it is really big news. But in the big scheme of things, life goes on. So could you argue that, people in Albuquerque are not wondering after the beast? Oh, look, he was dead, and now he's alive. How much of that gets beyond the local news and makes the national news and the international news? That's what we want to know. So I'm going to say, Tony, I'm going to lean towards the entire planet, especially because of the word all. But I would entertain if there is more to it. Could we put something together there? Interesting concept you bring to the table this morning, and I appreciate that. Let's go to Scott down in Texas, who sent in a question on Monday, just now getting to it on Thursday. Sorry about that, Scott. Scott says, more politics. Yes, but I really believe the chaos we live in right now is directly demonic. Is Satan silent and restricted in this day? Good question, Scott says. Maybe he doesn't really have to use direct influence now, as mankind is fully capable of running everything on his own. I don't know. Okay, we've got this deal of, the chaos in the world that we live in today. Is it directly demonic, or is it indirect influence? Is it directly demonic, or is this just a man reaps what he sows? My argument has been more that a man reaps what he sows, or a society reaps what it sows. And so our society planted some demonic seeds that had been left here, and now those seeds are bearing fruit. The chickens have come home to roost, as Obama's pastor would say. So that I call indirect. I think indirect would be the best thing. So my view is that Satan is not saying, how do I direct Israel? How do I direct Donald Trump? How do I get him to make this decision instead of that decision? How do I direct the masses of the people to do this instead of that? Rather than him directly sending his demonic forces or demonic powers into the halls of government and education and all these things, that he just lets mankind, as God has somewhat instructed him to do, just let mankind make their own decisions. Now, one of the things I would like to know, and honestly, I have my opinion on this, but it might be anyone's guess. I would like to know, has the world always been in this kind of chaos? Now, I know that there is a pendulum, there's ebb and flow, and that, even in my lifetime, I would say by and large things have degraded. Though, back in the 70s when I was a kid, we had Watergate, we had the Vietnam War, and we had, the leftovers of the 60s with the hippies and the riots and all that kind of stuff that took place. But also I know in the 70s, as a kid, I would get on my bike and, run till the day was done, out anywhere and everywhere, who knows where. And nobody ever thought about it. I would walk home, a mile and a half from school, and, as a fourth grader, fifth grader, sixth grader, even younger than that, I remember first grade, second grade, third grade. I was just, you walk home by yourself. And these are things that we don't even consider anymore. Now, I don't know if it's because we watch too much news now, that's why we don't consider it, or if there's a legit reason for not considering it. I think most of us would be today too scared to consider letting our kids or grandkids do that. So is our society worse, or has just our thinking changed, or what? We in fact, we were talking today in our men's breakfast how, today if 100 people get killed in a war, we all are in shock and awe. And yet in World War II, it was thousands and thousands, 10,000 killed in a single day. I think the highest day, what's the record, World War II for the number of deaths in one day? I want to say it's like 20,000 people. I could be very well off here. We'll see how good my history recollection is. But, well, I suppose if you consider Hiroshima and Nagasaki, we're talking 100,000 people in a day. And we can't even begin to imagine that kind of death. And Europe, basically was destroyed. Great parts of Great Britain and, Germany, France, just obliterated, and obviously into Japan later. And do we have the number there yet? Not yet. So in some ways, our world is better. And some of the things we deal with that we say, oh, this is terrible, has somewhat always happened. And I think maybe we just remember the good old days, but we forget everything bad about the good old days. What is our high number? Do we know?
23,000 in Polish bombardment.
23,000 in the Polish bombardment in a day. Now, and I'm sure that doesn't include, I think at Nagasaki and Hiroshima, there were more than that in a day. So that, the scale. Remember, probably don't remember, I'm looking it up right here. The New London school explosion, New London, Texas. 298 people died in that. It was a school explosion that was set. Wasn't accidental. It was made to happen. This was 1937. So 298, mainly kids, died. Now we talk about school violence and whatnot, but I don't know it. Probably the high end in these school mass shootings, you get 12, 13, 14 deaths. I don't know. I'm guessing there a little bit. Maybe it's in the 20s that you get. The one down in Texas perhaps was more than that at the elementary school. But it wasn't anywhere near 298 that were killed by the school janitor who created the explosion. 1937. So my point there is the chaos we live in right now any worse? In a lot of ways, I want to say yes, it is. But then maybe I'm thinking anecdotally, and maybe the evidence I give for it was worse is also anecdotal. Because maybe if you look at the whole of 1937, take out the New London explosion, maybe it wasn't that huge. That, you know, maybe every other day was nice. It was just that one day in that one place. So it's so hard to tell. Certainly, however, I do think that a man reaps what he sows, a society reaps what he sows, and the more we go in the late, the more we go in a society that has rid itself of any moral grounding, the worse it's going to get. However, I think there's some signs that maybe the newest generation, what do they call that? Is that Gen Z? I'm not sure. If I understand the generations right, you got Gen Z is like the college students today. They have, you know, every 3 days is a new generation, so it's hard to keep up with. Gen Z is the new one. Then you have the millennials right before that. And the millennials, there was a lot to look at and say, oh, I don't know where this thing is going. And then I think you have Gen X before that, and then the boomers, if I have all that right. Now, Gen Z, there's some signs they might be rejecting the secular humanism that had been propagated, really starting, I hate to blame the boomers, but it started with the boomers and the hippie generation, you know, make love, not war, all that kind of stuff. And that's still today who's protesting out there. You know, I promise you can go just down 2 blocks from here and you'll have old women out there. You know, Trump is mean. Trump is mean. When am I supposed to be back in the nursing home? Trump is mean. But Gen Z's not out there. As a matter of fact, they're turning out by the tens of thousands in Turning Point USA rallies. So maybe there's some hope there. And yeah, as Lisa says, every generation has its own set of problems. Each generation thinks the sky is falling. And it is, isn't it? As Lisa says. Yeah, you know, I think that there's probably a lot of truth to that we always think the sky is falling. So is it better? Is it worse? I don't know. Thank you. And Arian says, no, it hasn't. I'm not sure that I didn't get that right when it came in, so I don't know if no, it hasn't gotten better or no, it hasn't gotten worse, whichever one. But anyway, goes on to say, this is a nation and world ending in chaos. Ultimately, that is the case. But again, I would say, I might have mentioned this the other day. I can't remember. I know I thought this the other day. Socialism in America, you know, with Mondami and all that. Yeah, I think I did say this. The socialist push in the United States today is not nearly what it was in the 1910s and 1920s. The socialist parties in America, I mean, you can look it up. The Communist Party in America, they made some pretty good inroads in the 1910s and 1920s, and you know, we came real close to having national socialist candidates that really were making great headway. So, are we worse than we were then? Maybe not, if you put it. But in the 1910s, 1920s, between the anarchists go into the, say, late 1800s. In fact, it was an anarchist that assassinated William McKinley. Between the anarchists and the socialists, it was a world, it was a nation. We weren't quite the superpower then. It was a nation on the brink at that point. And then, of course, you got the Civil War prior to that. So there have been a lot of bad times, a lot of chaos down through the world and through the ages. And then we ebb and flow, and we get some good times, and let the good times roll. Hopefully, we will move along and something good and positive will happen. Thanks, Scott, for bringing up that discussion there. Again, that came in a few days ago. Sorry, I'm just now getting to it. But the next question of the day, what do we say to people that believe God doesn't kill people? Thank you, sir. And thanks for the question. Well, this does get into my theology there of God being silent. So what if they're right? To the people who say God doesn't kill people. Now, clearly, God has killed people. I think we could go to Acts chapter, is it 5 or 6? I think it's chapter 6. No. Yes. No. 5. Acts chapter 5. That's Ananias and Sapphira. And, they lie against the Holy Ghost, and boom, there they are, dead on the synagogue floor. So God absolutely did kill people. I think we could probably look into the book of Revelation, into the future, and we would find times when God, at the return of Jesus Christ, or other times perhaps during the tribulation, well, I'll drop the perhaps. Other times during the tribulation, he's going to kill people, like a third of the earth. So to say God hasn't or won't kill people, what do I say to a person who says that? God has never killed anyone. I would say, have you ever read the Bible? I mean, it seems to me like you're just rejecting the Bible. Now, does God kill people today? This is where we come in, and of course I hold to a position of the silence of God in this dispensation, that there is a natural order that includes within the natural order the spiritual code. How's that? And that spiritual code does say in the natural order, a man sows what he reaps. And if you sow to the wind, you will reap the whirlwind. Now, that's not God directly killing people. And so in a sense even, it's not God killing people. Sometimes this discussion spills over into, well, does God send people to hell? And sometimes people will say, no, God doesn't send them to hell. They chose to go there themselves. Which is, if you got a gift there and they chose to reject it, okay, you kind of made the decision. You decided to do this. So, does God directly kill people? Does God look down and say, here is a politician who is, cursing Israel, and so I'm going to give them a heart attack, or I'm going to give them an assassin's bullet, or I'm going to, give them cancer, or I'm going to make them trip on a banana peel and slip and break their hip and end up dead 10 days later. This is what I'm going to do. I don't see God doing that today. Now, it is a little bit of an argument from silence for the silence of God. But Sir Robert Anderson has given me a pretty good argument that I think is hard to deal with, hard to reject. And I see some of this in the books of Esther and Ezra and Nehemiah, where God wasn't directly working, but he sure, there sure were some people that stepped up to the plate during those times. And same today, people step up to the plate, both in a positive and in a negative. In a negative, you're talking about killing people, it's the government that wields the sword today. So God has given the authority there for, say, capital punishment, given that to the government, and the government carries that out, for better or for worse. So what do we say to people who believe that God doesn't, in the present, doesn't kill people? I would say they're probably right. Might not be the answer you wanted from me, but I would say they're probably right. I wish that it was much more instant. I don't know if I want it to be instant, because I might be the person who says the wrong thing or does the wrong thing at some point. But if you look into the future millennium, it looks like, let's say 100 years. God says, I'll give you 100 years to be stupid. But if you don't turn to me in that 100 years, you're out. It's an interpretation of the passage. But, there God's saying, okay, I'm going to let this go for a little bit. But ultimately, the soul that sinneth, it shall die. That is what's going to happen. And die an early death. I think we put it. It's not anymore that this is going to go down one generation to another generation. The fathers eat sour grapes and the children's teeth are set on edge. This is a thing that is going to be taken care of directly. But even that Ezekiel passage is given as prophetic of the future, not of now. So I would say today, God doesn't kill people. This doesn't make me any friends in the evangelical world, but I would say even God doesn't bring people to life. A man and a woman bring people to life, and people kill people. Abortionists kill people. Governments kill people. Car accidents kill people. Red dye number 40 kills people, I guess. Or maybe makes you want to kill people. Not sure. So maybe we should listen to those people a little bit. How's that for a contrarian answer that God doesn't kill people? Thank you. I see we have hearing aid discussion. I guess that means our chatting audience today is not Gen Z. Randy down in Texas. My wife always asks me the tough questions. Wives have a way of doing it. She asked me what Isaiah chapter 45 verse 7 meant. Randy's got a little more, but let's go ahead and read that. Sorry if you hear the dog in the background. The dog has come to work today. This is Take Your Dog to Work Day. And the mailman has shown up. So Isaiah 45:7. I form the light and create darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. That, it kind of ties into that last question we had. If I was arguing God doesn't kill people today, which I just did, somebody might come with Isaiah 45:7. I make peace, I create evil, I, the Lord, do these things, do all these things. Now, first of all, and I think the heart of the question goes a little bit different, but I do want to go ahead and tie that because it's a perfect tie-in. I think the Lord is speaking about a particular time and place in which he is in. And it is in that dispensation, or just in the broad overall look. As we said, God does kill people at certain times. I just don't think he is doing it right now. So God does. He claims right here, he forms light and creates darkness. I make peace and create evil. I, the Lord, do all these things. Now, what do you do with, let's say this, I make peace and create evil, and the passage in James which talks about nothing wicked comes from him. You know, God is the Father of lights. He's the giver of good things, not evil things. And yet here it's very clear, I create evil. This is what I do. Now, I think one of the things that we have to remind ourselves again so many times is that the word evil has come to mean something today that it didn't necessarily mean as it's used in Isaiah 45:7 in the King James, that I create evil. Evil was a word that was calamity, destruction, suffering, all of these negative aspects that might come into the world. Let's even say sickness, disease, all of that was encompassed under this umbrella of evil. Not just, you know, the headless horseman or, you know, some wicked, Godfather, that kind of wretchedness and evil. Rather, sickness, suffering, dying, disease, pain, chaos. I think there are times when God created chaos. I think of Gideon when he went up against the, Midianites. And God told him, you know, put the torches under a vase and, you know, break the vase and you'll have clinging and light everywhere. They'll all be scared. God created chaos there. So I would take evil in the sense that it was meant there rather than I create wickedness. I think we create wickedness. The devil, I guess, you know, sin originated with him. But God didn't create sin. God created free will. And then the devil created sin out of free will. And we create sin in our own lives out of free will. Can't really blame God on this. So, what does Isaiah 45:7 mean? I think let's say he did create a world in which evil very, very much could take place. Absolutely. And honestly, I'm kind of glad he did. There's always a side of me that says, no, I wish it was just a world in which nothing negative could ever happen. But that wouldn't be, I don't think you can do that and be created in the image of God. And I would rather be created in the image of God and have that possibility that this means I'm going to go off and be God myself and create a mess. I'd rather have that possibility than not have that possibility. Because I think the opposite of just a world in which everything is perfect and nice and sweet, it's a make-believe world. You know, you can make that in a dollhouse where, oh, look, everything's absolutely perfect. Because in a dollhouse, no hair actually goes down the drain to ever clog it up. It's a fake world. Yeah, but everything's perfect. We don't have to deal with plumbing in the dollhouse. I'd rather deal with a full reality rather than, remember I think the movie Truman, The Truman Show? Is that what it was called, The Truman Show? Or was it just called Truman? Where whoever that actor was, Truman, lived in this make-believe world. Everything was happy, smiling all day, everything was perfect. And what he didn't know is that it was all scripted. He was the only guy not in the know. This is the way the world worked. And he was kind of bummed out when he figured this out. I don't want a world that's fake. Everyone's an actor. Everyone's predispositioned to this is what you're going to say. This is what. So did God create a world in which chaos could happen? Yeah, absolutely. You know, I even wonder in the Garden of Eden, let's say before the fall, there was no death, but there was fruit. Fruit decays. If Adam was sitting under the coconut tree, it was gravity. Coconut's going to fall one of these days. Does it fall on his head and knock him out and he gets a concussion? Probably. I don't think the world was so different that coconuts come floating down and open themselves up and put a straw in there so that he can drink out of it. I think you could get hurt. So that's the world that God created is, hey, before you take a nap under the coconut tree, look up there and make sure that thing's not going to fall down on your head. So that's what, I make peace and I create evil is this is all fully possible. The whole realm is possible. I, the Lord, do all these things. Now, Randy goes on to say, I said, see if he answered it right. I said maybe he meant he created the tree of good and evil. What do you think of my thinking? Basically, I think you said it shorter than I did, and you said it right. That there is in Genesis chapter 2 the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Does mean that, let's just take evil again in the same way, that pain, calamity, trouble, all of that has to be within the realm of possibility. So I think I'm gonna ring the bell for you, Randy. I think you got it right on there. Excellent. Thank you. I see in Belgium, it's already gone to winter time, as Rudy calls it. We call it standard. We go on standard time this weekend. Don't forget that, ladies and gentlemen. Moving on. I sent a previous question. An anonymous comes in. I sent a previous question about, is it okay to say that only the remnant of Israel will enter the kingdom? I think we got that yesterday, didn't we? Recently anyway. But I forgot to put my email address on it. Well, you did on this one too. Forgot to put your email address. So does Isaiah 19:18 through 25 talk about a remnant of Gentiles in the kingdom? Okay, I think it was yesterday when I said, hey, it is the remnant of Israel that inherits the kingdom, but they're not a remnant of the Gentiles. Now, a follow-up, which actually came in before I answered the question, because this also came in on Monday, a follow-up brings up Isaiah 19:18 through 25. Is there a remnant of the Gentiles in the kingdom? Now, I said there wasn't. Let's see if Isaiah 19:18 through 25 talks me out of my answer. In that day shall 5 cities in the land of Egypt speak the language of Canaan and swear to the Lord of hosts. One shall be called the city of destruction. I'm going to keep reading. I don't know if I read that right, but I'm going to keep reading. In that day shall there be an altar to the Lord in the midst of the land of Egypt, and a pillar at the border thereof to the Lord. And it shall be a sign and for a witness unto the Lord of hosts in the land of Egypt, for they shall cry unto the Lord because of the oppressors, and he shall send them a Savior, a great one, and he shall deliver them. And the Lord shall be known to Egypt, And the Egyptians shall know the Lord in that day, and shall do sacrifice and oblation. Yea, they shall vow a vow unto the Lord and perform it. And the Lord shall smite Egypt, he shall smite and heal it. And they shall return even unto the Lord. And he shall be entreated of them and shall heal them. And in that day there shall be a highway out of Egypt to Assyria. Now that highway would almost by necessity have to go through the land of Israel, the land of Judah, because Egypt's to the south, Assyria to the north. And the Assyrian shall come unto Egypt, and the Egyptian unto Assyria, and the Egyptians shall serve with the Assyrians. In that day shall Israel be the third with Egypt and with Assyria, even a blessing in the midst of the land, whom the Lord of hosts shall bless, saying, Blessed be Egypt, my people, and Assyria, the work of my hands, and Israel, mine inheritance. Okay, very interesting passage here, and of course you get to that end. Blessed be Egypt, my people, Assyria, the work of my hands, Israel, mine inheritance. Now, I suppose that that if we were to study it, we would take Isaiah 19:18 through 25 to be a millennial passage. We would want to check that. I'm going to go with the assumption here because it would take us a little while to do it. But I'm going to go with the assumption this is a millennial passage. We might want to check just to make sure that this is not one of two things. One is something that happens before the millennium, or two, a possibility of something that could happen that might not happen. You do get that in prophecy sometimes, that what reads at first like an oracle, when you look at it, is actually, this is fully possible. Now, I'm going to reject those right now, but for your homework, I would say look at those. Is this actually talking about the millennium and not a possibility of another time that may or may not happen? But let's take it about the millennium, about the kingdom of God. In this coming kingdom, my position was Israel and the remnant of the Jews owns the kingdom. That might be backed up by this word right here, Israel, mine inheritance. You know, you're mine, you belong to me, and you will have what is mine. Israel, mine inheritance. But this clearly has Egypt and Assyria working together with Israel in a, let's call it a holy alliance, where the Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the God of Israel, is being honored from border to border, from north to south, and they are all serving him, to the point that he calls Egypt my people. Blessed be Egypt, my people, and Assyria, the work of my hands. Now, is that a remnant of the Gentiles that become that? Or is that perhaps more just a fulfillment of the new covenant? Let's look in Jeremiah 31. Put it on the other side of the screen here. The days come when I will make a covenant with the house of Israel, with the house of Judah, not according to the covenant I made with their fathers, to bring them out of the land of Egypt, which my covenant they break, although I was a husband unto them. This covenant I will make with the house of Israel after these days. I will put my law in their inward parts and write it in their hearts. I will be their God, and they will be my people. Now, I would think that right there, the day of the new covenant, my law is going to be in their inward parts. I'm going to be their God. They're going to be my people. I would think that would have some spillover effect to the neighbors, like Egypt and Assyria. Can we see any of that here? They shall teach no more every man his neighbor, every man his brother, saying, Know ye the Lord? They shall all know me. Now, again, that they shall all know me is talking about Israel, the house of Israel, the house of Jacob, the house of Israel, house of Judah. But if they all know me, as it goes on to say, from the least unto the greatest, I will forgive their iniquity, I will remember their sin no more. Seems like that also is going to have a far-ranging effect. Is Isaiah 19, 18 through 25 the effect of what we're seeing? We go on, thus saith the Lord, which giveth the sun for the light by day, and the ordinance of the moon, stars for a night by light, for a light by night, which divideth the sea and the waves. The Lord of hosts is his name. And then he goes on to say, okay, this is, I promise you, this is going to come about. It is going to happen. I think I would want to lean, that's not to say I should, but I would want to lean towards Isaiah 19, 18 through 25 is the residual of Israel when it is walking with the Lord under the new covenant. And the fact that the only Egyptians and Assyrians that made it in were pro-Israel to begin with. And the fact that the King of Kings, the Lord of Lords is reigning from Jerusalem and they see what is happening to their neighbor. And so they come, the Egyptians come and say, we're going to serve him too. I think that is better to say than a remnant will inherit the kingdom. This remnant of Gentiles, and I suppose you could call it a remnant of Gentiles because remnant just means that which is left. The remnant of the Gentiles is going to come into alliance with Israel, which I think is what you see here. Thanks for that question. Certainly do appreciate it. Interesting. Two interesting things. Our friend Charles down there in Florida says the Shanaxi, I don't know if I pronounced that right, Shanaxi earthquake in China, January 23rd, 1556, killed an estimated 830,000 people. It goes back to one of our first questions of the day, if you're just joining in, on evil in the world, and we use that. 830,000 people. Unbelievable. Stephen down in Florida talks about, in Isaiah 19, this pillar on Egypt's border. One Bible scholar said the pillar is the pyramid in Egypt. Now, obviously, interesting take on it, but that gets into my original disclaimer to say, hey, look at this. Should that be taken as a millennial passage? Again, I took it as a millennial passage, but is there the possibility that it's even talking about something in the past or something that's possible? Does it include something like the Pillar of Egypt? You know, I don't, the pyramid in Egypt, the Great Pyramid. I don't know that I would immediately see that out there, but if I heard this particular scholar, I might end up saying, you know, he's got a decent argument to be given there. There is that. I don't know that argument, but it's an interesting concept. And could it be there? I have done a series on the pyramids, and you know, do you take that? Do you tie that in? Does that become millennial, or is it not millennial? Is it looking to the past? A number of things that you look at. Les Feldick said that he believes the temple is manufactured already and all they have to do is assemble it. I think that's That's largely true. I know I've read articles about the altar, and there's very specific instructions about the stones of the altar. They got some out of the Dead Sea. Okay. Randy says, I've heard that from several theologians, most notably Gene Scott. A lot of interesting stuff there. Thanks. Hey, a word I see Gerard mentioned that on Worshify. We used to go to Worshify. Now we go to randywhiteministries.org, powered by Worshify. How's that? So the site is randywhiteministries.org rather than Worshify. That's our new way of doing things. Let's go to Eddie, our friend down in Chino, California. Good to see you. Question that came in on Monday. Sorry, I'm just now getting here. Is there any chance that Satan, the Hebrew word, Shatan, Hebrew Strong's number 7854 or Greek 4567, is not his proper name? There's more to this here that I'm going to read in just a moment. But yes, I would say there is a chance that Satan is not a proper name. As a matter of fact, I would say a pretty good chance. What has happened, and I think it's a good thing that it happened, but let me explain what has happened. I'll use that in a very broad sense. When we came to translate into English, we took, say, some Hebrew words that were really what we would call an adjective. Satan is adversary. Anybody who is adversarial is satanic. How's that? In the true Hebrew sense of the word. But to help us, whether or not this should have been done it's a matter of interpretation. Strictly speaking, most literally speaking, and I know of no Bible that has done this, but most literally speaking, we should have just taken those, if we wanted to be completely literal, should have just taken the Hebrews 78:54, Strong's word, Shatan, and just made it adversary. And many times it is. Many times it's just translated adversary. But every now and then, the translators, both in Hebrew and Greek, decided we're not even going to translate this word. We're just going to make it into English. So we got a little bit of precedent in the New Testament in that the Greek language did the same thing. The Greek language decided not to translate it. Let's just pull that word in and start using it. And so, you know, Jesus said, I saw Satan falling from heaven. And when it went into Greek, Jesus used the word Shatan in Hebrew. When it went into Greek, they just decided, hey, let's just keep that Hebrew word, Satan. Make it sound a little Greek. Let's bring it in. They transliterated it because they said, hey, this word comes up enough times to mean that same fella that we're going to go ahead and not translate. We're going to make that his name. Now, they never said it was his name, but we're going to make that the thing we call him. And typically the thing you call someone is their name. And then we did the same thing in English, and I suspect in most other languages around the world that they have done that. Now, there does come a point when a translator has to decide. When I know that I know that I know that this is talking about this one particular adversary, should I leave that kind of vague? And the translator said, no, there's no way this is anything else, and therefore we're not going to leave it vague. We're going to use his name. Now, in one sense, I want to say, your job is to always translate. But we could look at dozens of times where, let's say the King James translators, and we trust, they decided we're not translating here, we're transliterating. Some places they didn't and everybody else did. For example, Nephilim, all of the modern versions use Nephilim. King James said, no, we're not going to use Nephilim. That's a Hebrew word. We're going to translate it. That's what we do, is we translate. Therefore, it's giants. So you've got some of that translation philosophy. Now, here's kind of what I think is this. They made the decision. I suspect, I'm almost positive it was made prior to the King James. It was probably in the Bishop's Bible, and the King James went with the Bishop's Bible and said they made it Satan, and Geneva Bible made it Satan, and Wycliffe made it, all these other, and so they took the decision that had been made. But I think they also probably had a discussion, and they probably somewhere said, hey, there's no way you can build a good argument for this is somebody else. And therefore, why don't we just make that as obvious as we can? And they did it. So if there's not a viable argument another way, let's go with it. And I think many times that is the case. There's not a viable argument the other way. And so Satan is not his proper name. But when that word comes up, it's used. Now, let me go on to see what Eddie has to say. It doesn't seem to be used as a proper noun in Hebrew, from what I can tell. You're exactly right. How about in Greek? It's harder to tell in Greek, and also it's capitalized. Now, it's actually not really capitalized in Greek in the way we use capitalization. There's a couple of different styles of the Greek text, and one of them is all capital, so everything's capitalized, but it doesn't really have the kind of capitalization that we would think of. Eddie goes on to say, I'm especially curious about whether or not it's used as a proper noun in Greek. I think that the challenge is we're trying to mix the rules of English grammar into the rules of Greek grammar. And Greek grammar doesn't really have what we would call a proper noun. It has a subject and a verb for the most part. The nominative is the subject. But you could use a nominative of a person's name. Or let me use the word Timothy. Sometimes in the Bible we see Timothy, sometimes we see Timotheus. The only difference, it's the same guy. The only difference is what form. Is that a nominative or a genitive, or what form it is? So I don't think you can really say it's a proper noun in Greek, because they didn't really have what we call proper nouns in English. So I think that becomes a out of bounds question, if I can say it that way. Eddie goes on to say, I'm questioning the assumptions on this one. Good for you. I want to see if he's simply described, if the devil is simply described as the adversary, or if it's actually his proper name. So the bottom line truth is he's described as the adversary. Let me tell you one area in which there's a similarity here, and I am not I'm not such a fan on this. Many times the Bible calls us a sinner, but it's actually in the Greek, it's a description. We are sinful. Now the translators, I can somewhat understand it. The translators came and said, what do you call a person who's sinful? Because we need to put that in the Bible. Well, sinner, that's what you call a person who's sinful. One of the things I don't like about it is that took it imposed the rules of English onto the rules of Greek. Greek doesn't really have that kind of proper noun. Sinner. It has more the description. But then the problem is we're writing in English. We're not writing in Greek. That's one of the reasons I think, even though I fully trust the King James, it's one of the reasons I think you can fully trust the King James and still do a little Hebrew and Greek study, because there is a difference in the rules of how they would say it, how we can say it. And there's enough nuance there that it's worth looking into. Excellent job, Eddie down in Chino, California. Appreciate that. Well, let's see. I made it through all the Monday questions. How about that? I got some Tuesday and I got some Wednesday questions that we got to dig into and get to. Oh, and here's one from Randy I missed and came in today. I tell you what, Randy, I am going to put that in for tomorrow. The question about Israel departing Egypt. Begin a long downward spiral, goes into Egypt there. Yeah, you know, I said forms. Case is actually the word. The case that it is in. Thanks, Stephen, for helping me get that correct. Well, it's been real and fun and real fun. And tonight we're going to have some more real fun, living the Torah here. We'll look at that 7 p.m. tonight. We're going to look at the sacrifices in the Torah and the sacrificial system and what it actually did and what it provided. Would love to have you come and join us for that. If you have a question, you can go to randywhiteministries.org and there you can submit your question right up in the menu bar. You'll see Ask a Question. Go ahead and submit that. You can give your name or you can make up a name, whatever you want to do. And we'll look forward to getting that. And if you put an email address, like Eddie and Chino, we'll email you and let you know we got it taken care of, just in case I don't get to it, right on the same day. Thanks for being with us here. I certainly do appreciate it and look forward to seeing you maybe even tonight. If not, I'll be back on tomorrow at 10 a.m. Take care and God bless.